Salam, salam, inshallah, everyone is doing well. I realize it's been quite some time since I put together a video, and when I was reflecting on that, I realized, sometimes I just don't want to say anything, and not every controversy and every issue and every world event needs a commentary. And I know that's not good for social media, and I know it's not good for content creators, but that's my personality, and I didn't really want to comment on anything. Plus, I was super busy, really since before Ramadan. But it occurred to me that I wanted to share with all of you something that's very personal. And this is like my book. Like this, if somebody said, after the Quran, of course, if somebody said, like, what's the one book that you have to have? What's the one book that you're always going to go back to? It's Imam al-Ghazali's Al-Munqidh min al-Dalal, which is, it's not a path to Sufism. That's what the book is about. But the name of the book, Al-Munqidh min al-Dalal, is his deliverance from error. And I discovered Imam al-Ghazali when I was an undergraduate, sophomore year. When I was a sophomore at George Washington University, I came to find out that there's this world-renowned Muslim scholar, aka Sayyid Hussein Nasr. I had no idea who he was. I'd never even heard the name before. And I took Islam 101, and I was just, he had me at the first lecture. I was like, oh my God, I've never seen anything like this. And I was just completely captivated by the level of erudition, the grasp of the Islamic sciences, Islamic history, kind of everything that I needed. I was being fed. And one of the things I learned about is I learned about Imam al-Ghazali. I mean, in the back of my mind, I know that there's this guy named Imam al-Ghazali. In my house, my father had a copy of Ihya al-Din. So I remember that there's this is a very important figure. This is a very important person. And as a matter of fact, as a young person, as a young boy, whenever I would want to look something up, I would either look, we had these like English translations, I think of Bukhari. I think it was Bukhari and Muslim, or even just Bukhari. If I wanted to look up a hadith, when I was younger, I was not able to do that in Arabic. I would kind of do it in the English to help me. And as I got older and I could read the Arabic, I would look things up in Al-Ghazali. Like, what do you do, like the dua to say for this, the dua to say for that. So I had some familiarity with the name. I remember like the name of Al-Ghazali on the spine of the book, Ihya al-Din. I have that copy right in sort of the corner of my vision right now. But I really didn't discover him until I was in college. And I realized when I discovered his life story, which I'm not going to sort of rehash now, he went through, I don't want to say crisis of faith. I think that's kind of an overplayed concept, maybe much more of like a Western European thing. But he had a problem, right? He had reached the pinnacle of knowledge. He had reached the pinnacle of teaching. And anybody, like people like me who are into teaching the Islamic sciences, writing, I mean, oh my God, I can't even imagine the the accolades that he had. The thousands of students, state patronage, the equivalent of a super tenured professor, and he just gave it all up and walked away because he was not fulfilled. And in his journey of 10, 11 years away from his family, wandering, that took him to places like Jerusalem while it was under the occupation of the Crusaders, the Levant, Egypt, and of course Mecca and Medina. And then he ends up coming back, to what is to current day Iran to teach and whatnot. He penned this book, Al-Munqidh min al-Dalal. This is his like autobiography of what was the problem. Now I wanted to share with you, so let me finish the story. So I read this book in English. This is the same translation, but not the actual book. This is a new book. I think my actual book, I think I gave it to my brother, and I don't know, I have these sensitive things. If I give something to my brother, I don't want to call for it back. I've done that in the past, and I don't like to do that. So he can have it, and he can use it. But this is a newer print by Fons Vitae, but it's the same translation. And I read it in English, and it wasn't until I got to al-Azhar where I was like, you know what, I think I need to read this in Arabic because my Arabic was, or else you're not going to get the Arabic. So I found a long time ago, this is like almost 20 years ago, I found this Majmu'at Rasail al-Imam al-Ghazali, this like massive tome. It's like 1 to 7 volumes in one book. And it's, Dar al-Kutub al-Almiyya, it's not the preferable press, but this is this is the original one. I read it the first time in Arabic, so I had read it for a second time, and you can kind of see some of my markings, from the original reading. See, I have some things underlined, and then Later on, alhamdulillah, Dar al-Minhaj now is printing out the individual rasail, and the Dar al-Minhaj, which I don't have it at my desk right now, it's in another place. That book I've committed, for the last several years. I read it every year. I read it usually during the two Eids, right after Ramadan, right before Eid al-Adha, roughly. And because it's so short, it's like 90 pages in the Arabic. I think it's maybe 70, 80 pages in this English translation. You literally can read it in one afternoon or over 2 days. So I usually take it when I travel. And when I finish reading it, I'll go to the back of the book and I'll put the date, the Hijri date, the Gregorian date, and usually where I read it. And you'll find different cities because I usually take it when I'm traveling. So it's been my pattern, and I just finished reading it a couple of weeks ago, and I wanted to jump in here and share that with you. And this book literally saved my life. Imam al-Ghazali saved my life because, like Imam al-Ghazali, now I was nowhere nearly as accomplished, nor am I accomplished now the way he was at all. By any means, I don't mean that part, but I was searching. I was a young man, and I was searching. I had studied philosophy, and I had a liberal arts education in high school. I went to a private school where that was emphasized. So I got into, Western literature and philosophy. When I went to college, I assumed that I was going to be a philosophy major, and I was actually for the first year. But there was all of this stuff that was unfulfilled in me. And when I found Professor Nasser, may Allah Ta'ala bless him with health and long life, and I took those classes, and I got to see a practicing, professing Muslim's perspective, but a very deep academic, respectful perspective of the Islamic sciences. And in that kind of was all summarized in this person of Imam al-Ghazali, because Imam al-Ghazali was also searching. So in this book, he says, look, there are a few ways, there are a few approaches to find the truth. One is the philosophers, and that was what I was studying. And and Imam al-Ghazali is very famous for dismantling their arguments. He said another path is the path of the theologians, the mutakallimun. And even though as Azhari we study theology, we study the Ash'ari madhab, and I have to teach it, and we have great respect for it. The people that are really into that stuff, there's something a little bit off because there's something missing, and he takes that apart. And then there's the Batinis. At the time, it was sort of what we would call today the Ismaili Shias, but it was much more about there's a hidden imam, and there has to be an imam of the time, and only the imam can interpret for us. And kind of everything goes in his time. It was like the hidden imam. So he kind of critiques that. In other words, the approach that there's this pure esoteric knowledge that only a few people know, and that's the only way to truth. And then he's like, and then there's the path of tasawwuf. That's it. Those are the paths to the truth. And I stopped teaching. I was unable to teach and to speak. And in my mind, I wanted to walk down all of those paths and see where did they lead. And then he comes to tasawwuf. So I want to read for you, if it's okay with you guys, just a couple of the paragraphs in the English. Of course, I only read it in the Arabic now, so it's been a long time since I've read the English. I've only read this English translation once, but it's an okay translation. I want to read for you just a couple of the paragraphs of what he talks about tasawwuf. So maybe I want you to kind of feel what I felt when I first discovered this book and why I read it every year. So he says, rahimahullah, discussion of the way of the Sufis, of the ways of the Sufis. I'll read a paragraph and maybe make a couple of comments, but I just want you to hear what Imam al-Ghazali is saying. When I finished with all those kinds of lore, so he's talking about the philosophers, the theologians, and the esoteric approach. So he said, when I had finished with all those kinds of lore, I brought my mind to bear on the way of the Sufis. I knew that their particular way is consummated, realized only by knowledge and by activity, by the union of theory and practice. The aim of their knowledge is to lop off the obstacles present in the soul and to rid oneself of its reprehensible habits and vicious qualities in order to obtain thereby a heart empty of all save God and adorned with the constant remembrance of God. I mean, right off the bat, when I read that, I was like, oh my God, that's what I want. It's not a academic, theoretical, scholarly approach. I want to do it. I want to have the knowledge, and I want to be smart and intelligent. I want Allah to bless me with understanding, but I want to be that change. I want to have that transform. That's what I was missing. It was that physical, very personal transformation. He continues, theory was easier for me than practice. Therefore, I began to learn their lore from the perusal of their books, such as The Food of the Heart's Qut al-Qulub by Abu Talib al-Makki, which, by the way, he uses as a main reference for the Ihya al-Ulumuddin, and the writings of Al-Harith al-Muhasibi, and the miscellaneous items handed down from Al-Junayd, who is, as we refer to him, Imam al-Ta'ifa, Ash-Shibli, and Abu Yazid al-Bastami. May Allah Ta'ala have mercy on all of them. So these are all of the great Sufis from the Salaf, and others of their masters. As a result, I came to know the core of their theoretical aims, and I learned all that could be learned of their way by studying and hearing. Then it became clear to me that their most distinctive characteristic is something that can be attained not by study, but by rather a fruitional experience, and the state of ecstasy and the exchange of qualities. How great a difference there is between you knowing the definitions and causes and conditions of health and satiety, and your being healthy and sated. And how great a difference there is between your knowing the definition of drunkenness, vis-a-vis that it is the term denoting a state resulting from the predominance of vapors which rise from the stomach to the centers of thought, and then you're actually being drunk. Indeed, a drunken man, while he is drunk, does not know the definition and concept of drunkenness, and has no knowledge of it. But a physician knows the definition and the elements of drunkenness, though he is experiencing no actual drunkenness. So also, when a physician is ill, he knows the definition and causes of health and the remedies which procure it, though he is then actually bereft of health. Similarly, too, there is a difference between your knowing the true nature and conditions and causes of asceticism, and you're actually practicing asceticism and personally shunning the things of this world. I knew with certainty that the Sufis were masters of states, not purveyors of words. Right? So they walk the walk, they don't talk the talk. He's like, all these other people, the philosophers, the theologians, the esoterics, they're just talking. He's like, the Sufis, they did the work. They talk. I mean, there's a huge literature of talk. I mean, one might even argue most of the books of Islam are probably the books of Tasawwuf, because if you look at all the manuscripts, or close to it. But that's not really Tasawwuf. Tasawwuf is the change. It's working on yourself. So let me read that again. And I knew with certainty that the Sufis were masters of states, not purveyors of words, and that I had learned all I could by way of theory, because he had reached like that. He was a theologian, a jurist, a logician, etc. There remained then only what was attainable not by hearing and study, but by fruitional experience and actually engaging in the way. From the sciences which I had practiced and the methods which I had followed in my inquiry into the two kinds of knowledge, revealed and rational, I had already acquired a sure and certain faith in God Most High, in the prophetic mediation of revelation, and in the last day. These three fundamentals of our faith had become deeply rooted in my soul, not because of any specific, precisely formulated proofs, but because of reasons and circumstances and experiences too many to list in detail. And then he goes on and on and on. Again, that's like for me the crux. One of the main takeaways of the book is he's like, look, I'm looking for the truth. I was a young man. I was looking for the truth very much. I still believe that I am, on that journey, alhamdulillah. But it's a reminder for me, like a yearly reminder, to strip away all of the unnecessary stuff. There are a lot of claims. There are a lot of fads. And now with social media, everyone has a channel. Everyone has content. There's a lot of that stuff around. But what Imam al-Ghazali is teaching us in this is that it's about doing the actual work. It's about having the theory, which is why I wanted to continue my studies at al-Azhar and to be licensed to do this stuff correctly. But at the end of the day, that's still not enough. You got to be the change. You got to do the work. And for me, it's just very refreshing. Again, I highly recommend it. Now, in 2004, a documentary came out called Alchemy of Happiness, which is confusing because it's another one of Imam al-Ghazali's books, Al-Kimya al-Sa'ada. I believe it was originally written in Persian, and then you can get it into Arabic and English. But it's basically a docudrama on this book. And it's, all of Sayyid Hussein Nasr's in it, Hamza Yusuf's in it, T.J. Winter, Abdul Hakim Murad's in it, I think a couple other people. And sometimes I tell my kids let's watch it together. It's basically a narration, it's a docudrama of Imam al-Ghazali's autobiography. So for those that are more like into the visual aspect, it's a very easy, you can find it for free on YouTube now. It's been 20 plus years, it's been out there. So for me, this is the book. This is, today I'm going to say this is the book. Maybe if you ask me next week, I might say there's another book, because there's so many books that are important to me. But this is definitely at the top of the list. When it comes to the Islamic books, I mean, this book really speaks to me. When I read this book, I feel it. I don't just understand it, I feel what Imam al-Ghazali. I understand how it is to be so filled with information and knowledge, but not being able to teach because you're just like, you've tripped yourself up because you've lost the heart of the matter, the heart of the quest for the truth, which is to transform yourself. That's what matters. You can know all of the proofs for this, all of the rules for that. You can memorize all of the rules of grammar, but if you have no state change, then it's useless. It's not going to help you Yawm al-Qiyamah. And at the end of the day, that's what matters. Is that the knowledge that we have now will help us in this life and in the life to come. So for me, this is, I love Imam al-Ghazali. I really do, rahimahullah. I owe him a lot because this book came at a time where I most needed it. And what Imam al-Ghazali did for me, don't forget, he also did for the Ummah. And his book, Ihya Ulumuddin, the revival of the sciences of Islam, is, after the Quran, probably the most famous book of Islam. East and West, North and South, past and present and future. And again, it's just let me just tell you what you really need to know and need to do to lead the good life. You're not going to read the book and become a mujtahid. You're not going to read the book and become a hafidh of hadith. You have to have like a personal calling. But for all the rest of us, that's what you need. You need to look at that stuff and really look at the heart of the disciplines that we have to do, the obligations that we have as believers, and do them with that mindfulness so that you live a good life. So this summer, I highly recommend you guys get this book, Deliverance from Error, or as it is sometimes translated, Al-Ghazali's Path to Sufism. It is his path to Tasawwuf, which is, again, is a good translation. It has a lot of footnotes in the English. In the English, it's, I think, under like 90 pages. Let me see. I want to tell you exactly how many pages it is. 87, it's like 65 pages. I mean, you can literally read this book in an afternoon. And keep it close, and I trust that you will benefit from it immensely. That's it for now. Be well, be safe. I'll talk to you soon, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.